Welcome to the Dansports.tips NFL preview show. We're looking at the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, the Washington Redskins and the Philadelphia Eagles. I think we should start with the Dallas Cowboys. The obvious place to start with the Cowboys is the elephant in the room that goes by the name of Tony Romo and his absence for, depending on what you listen to, anywhere between 6 weeks and the season, with 10 weeks the most commonly accepted length of absence. The Cowboys actually do have a pretty decent schedule, even with Dak Prescott. If we assume he is adequate a quarterback for them after being thrust into the fray, I think they've got every chance in reaching their Week 7 bye at around 3-3. I see no reason they won't win at home to the New York Giants in Week 1 and the primetime matchup with Chicago in Week 3 and at San Francisco in Week 4. Those are all very winnable games. Coming out of the bye, Philadelphia at home and at Cleveland legitimately mean this team will quite possibly be somewhere in the 4-5 or 5-4 range when Romo comes back, if Week 11 is a reasonable assumption. Dak Prescott is going to have to go some to be worse than last year's concoction of Romo replacements, Brandon Weeden, Matt Castle and Matt Moore. They are upgraded in all probability at running back with Ezekiel Elliot over Darren McFadden and Joseph Randall, who were the running backs of note last year. They do still have Des Bryant. He also was absent for many games, injured last year. It wasn't just Romo. If they are 5-4 after Week 10, Romo comes back, Bryant's still healthy, Elliott's what we think he is, this team is more than just in contention in the NFC East. They're probably the favourite. The defence was poor last year. I don't think they're good on defence, but I don't think they're as bad as they were last year. I'd be very surprised if a Rod Marinelli unit is that poor for 2 years in a row. They will certainly have better karma now that Greg Hardy has been removed from the team. The flip side of this is they need to generate pressure from somewhere, and Hardy was their most dynamic player in respect to a pass rush. And a defence that was susceptible to the deep ball with weak play in the corners, though that will improve if Orlando Scandrick is healthy and back to his best after his knee injury that cost him last year in training camp, could fare worse if they do not manufacture a way to get there with the rush. That comes down to trusting in Rod Marinelli, basically. You do also have to question this team's draft. When you take a running back that wasn't really an area of need behind the best offensive line in football, and you take a defensive player in the second round who's going to miss basically the whole in first year with an injury, and you need impact on that side of the ball now, the clock is ticking on this Dallas window. The O-line is pretty much all on expiring contracts. Romo is fragile and getting older, but in a weak division, it could be argued the Romo injury doesn't kill the Cowboys. It just increases the value on them to win the division. It just depends on how much you believe in the Giants and the Redskins. Let's just say the schedule is kind to Dallas, and they should have plenty of divisional games left when Tony Romo returns this year. As for the New York Giants, I've got a similar issue with them that I have with those Buccaneers of Tampa Bay. I can't see the logic in firing your head coach only to appoint his offensive coordinator in some strange kind of continuation of what went before. If that was that good, why has he been fired? I think it's best to probably start with his team on the defence. That's where they've spent money. That's where they were god-awful last year. They signed Olivier Vernon. They've made him the highest paid end in the league and paired him with the incumbent Jason Pierre-Paul. If we assume that JPP is going to be used to whatever is left of his hand now, don't play with fireworks, kids, then this pass rush has a chance. And the Giants' defence that went to a Super Bowl with Spagnuolo as defensive coordinator was built on rushing for, getting pressure and dropping everyone else into coverage. That is how they beat the 15-1 Packers in the playoffs that year. They also added tackle Damon Harrison from the Jets to completely revamp their defensive front, and he certainly profiles to improve them against the run. Though it has to be said it was the pass defence and specifically the lack of pressure generated as they finished 30th in the league for sacks that makes Vernon and JPP as a tandem so crucial to this unit. It remains to be seen if Spagnuolo has managed to build another defence on the model of the first of the recent Giants Super Bowl champions. They did also spend big money at cornerback, bringing across Janoris Jenkins from the Los Angeles Rams. He replaces the departed Prince Amukamura, who's now gone to Jacksonville. He will form a tandem with Dominique Rodgers-Karamati, and first round draft pick Eli Apple should also see action either in the slot or as a nickel back. All are similar types of corners in honesty. The brutal truth is this defence was such a mess last year, there wasn't enough money in the world to fix everything. The weaknesses at linebacker and safety remain largely unaddressed. There may be rookie starters in some of those positions, and I'm not sure that this team is going to be better enough to be a serious contender in the playoffs if they even get there. The offensive line still sucks, which in turn, along with a complete lack of talent at the running back position, means they will not be able to run the football. Eli Manning has got 2 rings, and he has done this avoiding sacks well, dumping off to receivers and running backs on hot routes and avoiding pressure. And of course, there is Odell Beckham. In normal circumstances, this wouldn't be enough. But in the NFC East, it just might be. The Washington Redskins, I think it's fair to say that the finish to the season and the run of games by Kirk Cousins that drove the Redskins to a playoff berth was something of a surprise last year. I've got a little bit of a rule when things like that happen, and it's basically, I don't believe it until I see it again, as the sample size is too small. Unless we forget, the Redskins didn't beat a single team that finished last season with a winning record. Not once. Over to you, Kirk Cousins. The Redskins, I don't think are going to repeat, and I don't think they're going to repeat for a few reasons. First and foremost, they're the Washington Redskins. That isn't what they do. But there are a few areas of concern that when you combine them all, they don't make for good reading. The Redskins' run game is an absolute atrocity. They have moved on from the distinctly average Alfred Morris, but now find themselves with a combination of Matt Jones and Chris Thompson as a third down back. Unless some major steps forward are made by those players, in particular Matt Jones, then the run game just doesn't look like it's going to be any better this year. Now, I understand that the passing game is more important in today's NFL, but you need to run the football to keep the defence honest. You need to close out games, close games at the end as well, to stop teams getting the ball back. Otherwise, defences are just going to tee off on your quarterback and knock him down in the backfield. This gathers even more importance for a quarterback like Cousins, who ranked bottom 3 in the NFL against the blitz in Football Outsiders DVOA rankings. They spent some money on defence. They brought in Josh Norman. He's now the highest paid cornerback in the league after coming over from an outstanding year in Carolina's Super Bowl run. The good news is the Redskins are efficient enough at pressuring the quarterback from their linemen so that cornerbacks can thrive, just like Norman experienced in Carolina. The bad news probably is that a solid pass rush can improve a defensive back's performance by virtue of the quarterback having less time to make a decision and receivers less time to get open. Therefore, that money probably could have been spent on a lower tier cornerback who would have produced adequately and also given them enough money to fix other areas of weakness on the overall team, rather than just making the Skins an intimidating pass defence, which they are. They're one of the best in the league, probably the way it looks. But they don't look to me like they're going to be very efficient against the run. Their linebackers are dreadful, and they can't tackle. As such, falling behind late for this team is going to be a very perilous position, and I don't think we're going to be seeing many cries of "you like that" from Kirk Cousins this year. And this brings me on to the Philadelphia Eagles. There isn't a lot to say about Philly this year. They've sent Sam Bradford away to regain a first round pick after they used them to trade up for Carson Wentz last year. I have no idea if Carson Wentz will be any good or not, or whether or not he'll be a bust. At this point, nobody does. That being said, I don't believe the Eagles have put him in the best position to succeed, and by trading Bradford, it'll be surprising if they finish anywhere other than last in the NFC East and possibly the NFL this year. Unlike Dallas, who've lost Romo to injury and start the arguably less ready Dak Prescott, Philadelphia lacks the supporting cast to cover up the cracks like Dallas does. They have a tight end in Zach Ertz, who's been a buzz name for production for many years now, but it's reached a point where we need to stop hearing about it from you, Zach Ertz, and actually see it on the field. And this needs to be the year. Jordan Matthews is pretty good at wide receiver, but what else is there? Nelson Aguilar? He looked nothing last year and less this pre-season. They have a decent looking offensive line, but Lane Johnson's suspension doesn't help that, because he's suspended again, and they're relying on Ryan Matthews and his health problems in the backfield as their number one running back. Ask San Diego fans how that works out. Darren Sproles is the backup. He's not an every down back at a position where they now lack a run game to ease the pressure on the rookie quarterback. It just doesn't look like good news. The defense is arguably underrated. It does have playmakers such as Connor Barwin, Fletcher Cox. I like Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator, even if he's not so good as a head coach, in my opinion, after his Detroit tenure. They were poor against the run last year. It's difficult to see where improvement's going to come against rushing this year with the additions they've made, and it just doesn't look like Philadelphia, who are paying out a lot of money to some star players, but have neglected the quarterback position. It's almost like they're paying out a lot of money to win 4 games. Doesn't make any sense. The bets for me in this division are Philadelphia to finish 4th in the NFC East. That's at 7-4 with Ladbrokes. I think that's a knocking bet. Ezekiel Elliot to be the top Dallas touchdown scorer this season. When they get in the red zone while Dak Prescott's there, they can either hand it off or they can put it in his hands. I know what I'd be doing. I'd be handing it off to the running back behind that line. Jordan Reed to score the most touchdowns for Washington this year. They don't have a run game. He's a prototypical big red zone target. I think he's a knocking bet. I'm going to take Washington to win under 7.5 games this season. I think they regress. I think, 7 and 9 is probably where they finish. And I'm going to take Eli Manning to have over 4,420.5 passing yards this year. Manning has hit or got within 10 yards of this in 3 of the last 5 years. At the end of the day, the Giants sure as hell aren't going to be able to run the ball. The defense will be better, so they may not be in as many shootouts, but I don't know that it's going to be outstanding. Manning can utilise Odell Beckham and other passing weapons, and that's the best bet I could come up for a very puzzling team in what is a confusing looking division this year. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, let me know what you think is going to happen in the NFC East in the comments, give me a follow on Twitter at Dansports.tips, check back later on for the NFC North, and I'll be back all day tomorrow with the AFC division previews as well. See you later.